Man saved a millionaire's daughter, but the father's response was not what anyone expected. Despite the fact that it was a lazy Sunday, Noah woke up with the first rays of the sun. The man liked looking out of his window to watch the sunrise while drinking a cup of hot coffee. Noah loved Sundays as it was also the only day he got a well-deserved break. On other days, he worked a lot as 6 months ago, his mother had a stroke and, unfortunately, was never able to recover from it. Her treatment was rather expensive, but Noah loved his mother and cared for her with tenderness and respect. Noah got ready to take a walk and also decided to stop at the store on his way back. It was still a little chilly, so Noah jogged for a bit to keep warm. Walking down the promenade, the man stopped to admire the bridge and the deep waters of the majestic river flowing under it. Mesmerized by the beautiful view, Noah stood there for several minutes. Suddenly, when the man was about to leave, he heard a scream followed by a quiet splash. Noah shuddered and began to look intently into the ripples of the waves, trying to determine the source of the strange sound. And when a head with long hair popped out of the water, Noah didn't hesitate even for a second. He took off his jacket and immediately jumped into the water. Since it was early spring, and the water hadn't yet warmed up enough after the long winter, Noah's body was instantly pierced with the ice needles of the cold. He even lost his breath for a bit, and his movements were constrained by the cold. Fortunately, Noah was a good swimmer, and he managed to grab the drowning woman in time. The man swam as best he could, making sure that the woman's head stayed above the water. His efforts paid off, and soon they were both on the shore. Without wasting any time, Noah put the woman on her side to clear her lungs of water. Immediately after that, the woman started coughing, which calmed Noah down a little. Finally, when the stranger stopped coughing, Noah put his jacket over her shoulders and took her by the hand and quickly took her to his place. Despite meeting under rather unusual circumstances, Noah couldn't help but notice how beautiful the woman he saved was. On their way, the two got to talking, and they both clearly felt mutual sympathy. As it turned out, the woman's name was Susan, and she was homeless. Noah told her that with her looks, she should be acting in movies, not living on the streets and definitely not jumping off the bridge. Susan responded, saying he had no idea how sick she was of her life. She had no idea who she was, and she couldn't even remember her parents. She remembers waking up on the street behind some trash cans and nothing else. As soon as they reached Noah's house, he turned on the heater and rummaged through his closet in search of warm, dry clothes for Susan to change into. Then he prepared some hot tea for both of them. The two spent the rest of the day talking and watching TV. When Noah was getting ready for work the next day, the first thing he did was tell his guest that she could stay with him for as long as she wanted. All day long, the only thing Noah could think about was whether Susan would stay or she would leave. Noah worked at a cafe, running various errands and doing tasks that required a lot of strength. It was his aunt who helped him get this job. The day seemed endless, but when Noah was finally done with work, he ran home in a matter of minutes. As he opened the front door, Noah wondered whether Susan had left or she had stayed. But as soon as Noah came inside, he immediately smelled something delicious and realized that Susan ended up staying and she was even cooking. During dinner, Noah told Susan that he talked to his aunt for her, and she promised to help Susan get a job as a waitress. Susan was absolutely thrilled at hearing this and gave Noah a kiss on the cheek. Over time, having common responsibilities and working at the same cafe, the two developed a strong relationship, which they were both happy about. One day, Susan went to take out the trash and saw a little puppy in the yard. The poor thing was very hungry and was shivering from the cold. Susan felt so much pity for the pup that she couldn't just leave him there. Susan picked up the pup and took him inside, and looked questioningly at Noah. The man understood everything without words and smiled encouragingly. The two were now proud parents of little Charlie. The little puppy loved fooling around and chewing on everything he could reach. But when Charlie got a bit older, Noah took it upon himself to train the dog. Susan couldn't help but tell Noah that he might even make a good father. She was very impressed by Noah's dedication to raising the dog. Noah didn't get the hint and looked at Susan in surprise. But Susan had already changed the topic of the conversation, deciding to come back to it at a more convenient time. But soon, something happened that drastically changed the lives of the young couple, jeopardizing Susan's dreams of marriage. It was an ordinary Saturday afternoon, and the cafe was full of visitors. The waitresses were busy running around, trying to serve all the customers. And then, as Susan was trying to bring the order to one of the customers, someone suddenly grabbed her by the hand. It was a dignified gray-haired man in a suit. He was accompanied by two men whose posture and looks made it clear that they were professional bodyguards. The man recognized Susan as his daughter and began telling her how long he had been looking for her. He then hugged the woman, who was very surprised and confused. It was so unexpected that Susan let go of the tray she was carrying, and all the plates fell to the floor with a loud crash. The gray-haired man didn't seem to care in the least as he held on tightly to Susan's hand and pulled her towards the exit. That's when Noah came into the dining area and rushed after them without a moment's hesitation. But the businessman's bodyguards quickly stopped him with a few punches. When Noah finally came to his senses, he was already in the back room, and his aunt was putting ice on his face. Feeling powerless, Noah cried softly, which made the compassionate woman turn away. Coming home from work, Noah found an empty apartment and Charlie looking questioningly into the owner's eyes. Susan didn't come back the next day either, or the next week, and even the next month. Noah was sad all this time and shuddered every time he thought he heard familiar footsteps in the hallway. One day, walking past a newsstand, Noah saw a magazine with a catchy headline. The model who was thought to have passed away was found 2 years later, and the happy father thanked God that she was alive. Looking closely, Noah saw the photograph of the model under the headline. There was no absolutely doubt in his mind that this was the picture of Susan. Noah thought sadly how he was the one who had saved her. He could feel resentment rising in his soul. Another month had passed. One day, while sitting in front of the TV with Charlie, Noah heard an insistent knock on the door. Wondering who it could be, Noah opened the door and saw Susan dressed in a beautiful wedding dress. Noah couldn't understand what was happening and was confused as to why Susan was dressed like that. Noah wanted to say something else, but Susan hugged him and shut his mouth with a kiss. As it turned out later, Susan had run away from her own wedding, arranged by her millionaire father. He had wanted to marry his only daughter off to the son of his companion. 2 years ago, Susan's father had already shown her character when he refused to pay the ransom to the kidnappers who had taken his daughter. Then, because of the wayward businessman, the girl was beaten up badly and left in the trash. But despite everything that happened to her, the woman survived, but she suffered from partial memory loss. Once again, her father had tried to impose his will on his daughter. But this time, Susan couldn't let it happen. Susan loved Noah with all her heart, and she didn't want to spend her life with anyone other than him. After listening to Susan, the man smiled for the first time in weeks and hugged her tightly. Later, Susan suggested that they move to another state in order to be as far away from her father as possible. The young woman had $300,000, which she had inherited from her grandmother, and was willing to use to implement their plan. Taking Noah's mother and Charlie, the young couple moved to New Jersey, where they bought a house and a nearby plot of land. Noah soon got into farming and was even able to help his mother out with better treatments. The couple finally had a small wedding ceremony, and a year later, they were parents to twins who immediately filled the house with joy and laughter.